Hey guys, welcome back to Fruitful Gardening. I'm Andrea, and today we're out in the garden again, and we're going to be filling in some spots that need to be filled in this garden bed over here today. So I've just got two things that I'm going to plant. One is a cherry bell radish, and the other is some Bates collard. And I know last year I grew collards in the fall, and I know they do better in cooler weather, but I just need to fill in this space right here because this is where I harvested the garlic. And I already have my fall garden planned. And so if you were growing spring crops, summer crops, and then fall crops, those are different categories, and certain things grow well in the spring where it's cool at first and then it warms up later. And then in the summer are things that like hot weather and warm weather, so things such as tomatoes, peppers, melons, all of the things that are not cool weather hardy at all. They don't like cool weather at all. And then the things that grow in the fall are usually things that can grow in the spring, but so I'll give you an example of like broccoli. I can grow broccoli in the fall. I cannot grow broccoli in the spring because the cool time in the spring is too short. It gets hot too fast and the broccoli will go to flower and not produce its head. And so I grow broccoli and cauliflower and cabbage in the fall because then it's going into cooler weather and they are cool weather hardy and they are frost hardy. They can go into that cool weather and grow. So when we're planning out a garden, we want to calculate the days that we need to harvest for certain things, and that's how we know when we can plant certain things. So for this cinder block garden bed over here, I planted spring things, which were potatoes, and the garlic was in here, and I've got green beans and cucumbers, basil. There are a couple of tomatoes, but those will stay up until frost in the fall. Those will not leave that spot because they have a long growing season. So this is where I harvested my garlic right here. And I know that as of right now, I've got about 7 to 8 weeks until I need to plant my fall crops here. So I had to find something to plant that wasn't going to be longer than that. And that's why I picked the radishes, because these are actually only 22 days, but I can plant some more radishes here. It's really hard to find things that would be ready in less than, say, 56 days for that 7 weeks. And these collards, it says they're 75 days to maturity, but for the collards, I'm just gonna go ahead and plant them, and whenever I need to plant my fall crops, I will pull these. So that way I have something growing in here to cover this ground a little bit until I'm ready to plant for the fall. And so that's a reason that it's very important to plan your garden and to actually know your days to maturity if you want to be able to rotate crops in certain beds so that you can get more harvests out of your season. And that is what I have finally figured out after years of gardening. When I first started gardening, I only planted summer crops. I did plant kale, but at the time I didn't know that that was a cold hardy crop. So I had just planted it with my summer stuff, and it grew. I mean, I got like baby kale off of it, but that was about all I got off of it in the summer. This was in Texas, and so it was super hot. That's all I knew how to grow was summer stuff. I would only plant tomatoes, peppers, okra, basically just summer things. And I didn't really understand the days to maturity. I didn't understand how I would get more of a harvest if I would time things correctly, like plant things in the spring that would be ready before it got too hot, plant summer crops, and then plant things in the summer that would go into the fall and that could survive in the cooler weather in the fall. Which my climate now, my first frost date is November 15th, and so it's usually around the middle of November. somewhere in there. And I know that I have to have my plants that are fall crops to a certain stage before we get to that point, because they are frost hardy, but a lot of those plants that you grow in the fall are not freeze hardy, so they wouldn't necessarily do good in a very hard freeze. But they are a light frost. They can survive freezing temperatures. Misty! Hi, Misty! Misty's back here. She likes to hang out in the garden. She lays in this bed over here. I think she's trying to catch any little critters that try to come in here. So as we learn and as I have grown, and I've gardened for years now, I have actually, and last year was the first year that I actually grew a fall garden, and I actually grew cabbage, which was the first time ever, and broccoli, and I did grow cauliflower, but I did not plant it early enough for it to get ahead on it. It had just started getting ahead when it got really cold, and it basically was done after that. So this year I know to plant it earlier. But what I'm trying to say is it's just trial and error and knowing your days to maturity. That's actually really important, and I never really paid attention to that before because I thought, you know, you just grow stuff in the summer. And so as I've learned how to garden better, I know that I pay attention to the days to harvest, and so this was really hard to find things. This is basically the only thing that I could grow here. And I know that the collards aren't gonna have time to come to complete maturity, but I know they'll have lots of leaves by the time that I need to switch this bed over. So those are what we're gonna plant. And I have this seeding square that I use sometimes when I'm planting stuff, and it has a chart. It has a chart of what you can plant in the different colored holes. So for, let's see, for radish, it says that you use the red circles, and so there will be 16 in a square foot, and these are the red ones. So they're really close, and there's 16 red holes on here. And for the collards, they're supposed to be 12 inches apart. So I think that I would only go the one hole in the middle. Let me see what it says. Well, it doesn't have collards on here, but it does have Swiss chard, which is kind of the same size. It says that 4 of those can go in one of these squares. But it does say kale, you only put 1 per square. So I think I'm just gonna do 1 per square, and I'll just use this and use this for the radishes. And then this also came with it. And if you have your seed spacing, like how far the depth of your seed is supposed to go down, then you can use this. And I just use this to make the holes. You can stick it through your hole to the desired depth that your seed needs to go. And I don't use this actually too much because usually I'm planting in a row or around stuff, and I don't usually use this a lot, but since this bed is pretty clear of anything, I'm just gonna go ahead and use this to get some good spacing, just because I know that I'm on a time crunch on these, so it'll definitely be better if I don't cram them, which is usually what I do because I don't really go by the spacing on the seed packet. I just plant stuff where I want to plant it, and I've kind of learned over the years what can take being planted closer together. Like for instance, green beans, you really can plant those really close together. I have done that for years now, and they do okay like that. They produce a good crop. And another reason that I plant stuff close together is to be as a ground cover on the ground, so it suppresses some of the weeds. And that's another reason that I plant close and don't necessarily use this all the time. But I do like this. You just press it into the ground, and then you use this to poke your holes and drop your seed in, and you're done. And it's great for square foot gardening. so that you can, if you want it to look really neat and be spaced correctly, because sometimes spacing correctly is important for the root growth of the plant, to have enough space to grow. And so that I'm just going to use this today, and we're going to get these seeds in the ground. And it is pretty dry right now, but I'm going to water this garden over here after we plant these seeds. The only thing about this that is a little difficult is that the ground should be level, which, like, super level, but that's kind of difficult. My ground in here isn't necessarily just a complete flat level surface, because I just harvested that garlic. So once I plant these, and I'm gonna leave these in here for, like I said, about 7 or 8 weeks, then I'm gonna put compost on this bed and should level it out again. So I'm gonna start with the radish here, the cherry bell. So I'm gonna go, it says a 1/2 inch is where you want to put it, and there is no 1/2 inch marker on here, but I mean, we can guess that it's about in the middle of this. See, this isn't level. Try to make it level here. Okay, let's see if I can drop a seed in each hole. Oh, I just dropped more than one. So some of those will have more than one in the hole. That's okay. Okay. So I'm just going to cover those up. And so I can kind of see where that line was. I'm just going to come over here, put a little hole right here. Yeah, this should be good. I'm going to put a collard right beside it. I'm just going to go down right here and do this again. And so to me, it would seem that it would be easier, like I usually do it, is I just make a line like this and then drop a bunch of seeds in the hole or in that line and then cover it up. And that's why I don't use this a lot, because I feel like there's a lot more that could go in a square foot than just this. But it's important to keep our ground covered when we're gardening, or keep it watered. Like, even though there's not anything in here, I have been watering this, because if you don't water it, the living organisms in your dirt can start to die, and it can actually cause it to not be able to absorb any water if you never water it. So even though there's not anything planted in here now, I am still watering. So I'm gonna put this up over here, and I'm gonna show you the Andrea way that I do. I do use this. So I just take it make a line. Take the seeds, and this is only for stuff like lettuces and these little radishes. And then just kind of drop a couple down the row, and then I can just make another row here. Drop a couple more. Radishes can be planted semi-close because you can thin them out. And radishes are actually really good pickled, like not actually cooked, but like fresh pickled. If you just make a simple pickling brine with whatever flavors you like and put them in the fridge, they taste really good that way on salads and for snacks. Okay, I think I'm gonna put just, well, I'm gonna cover that up before I forget. So I'm just gonna come over to this side and put a couple of these collards. And we like collards. I actually like kale better, but my family likes collards a little better. But they don't eat them like crazy or anything. They're not that big on collards. So I usually don't plant them. I don't plant that much of them anyway. I think I planted like 3 or 4 last year. And I'm just planting these, and whatever we don't eat, I'll just give to the chickens. No big deal. That's the good thing about things like these leafy greens, like kale and collards and Swiss chard, is you can grow that for simply for your chickens and your birds. Like my ducks, they love greens and all kinds of different stuff. Like when I pull anything, I take the greens to the ducks and the chickens, and they love that. So that's another reason that I was planting a few more than I normally would, is just to be able to give them some fresh greens and also to keep this ground covered. So now we're gonna water those in, and then we're gonna go say hello to the chickens. So I watered everything, got it watered where we planted the seeds, and I'll water usually when I water is in the morning, but I just wanted to get the ground wet for those for the night, so I will get those watered really good in the morning also and just keep them wet until they sprout. I've got some treats for the chickens. Hello, chickies. That was just some leftover salad. We had salad for dinner. So whatever's kind of scraps from the house, we come out and give it to the chickens. And I did have to let the chickens out of their coop area. Decided to let them out during the day and just let them peck around. They've really been enjoying it. Last thing I'm going to do is harvest some raspberries. These are going nicely, these raspberries. And that's one thing about growing berries yourself, is that one's not quite ready yet. Right here. Is that you have to come out every day and check. It's not like, you know, this is a big enough patch that I would come harvest all at once. I have to come out here every afternoon and get the right berries. So you would have to have like a field of berries if you were going to be able to harvest, like these are ready, be able to harvest enough. So what I do is I harvest these every day, and I know that I need about 8 cups to make jelly. So once I have about 8 cups in the freezer, like when I harvest, I'll come out here every day and harvest, and then I have been letting the kids eat them lately, but yesterday I put some in the freezer. It was about a cup. So I will keep putting them in the freezer throughout this season as they're producing berries, and eventually I'll have enough for a batch of raspberry jelly, which is our favorite. So I think I see one back here. And these raspberries are prickly, and they like to put on their berries underneath leaves. So like on a blackberry, they kind of stick up out of the top, but on raspberries, it's underneath. So you really have to check. This is a really nice one. Nice big raspberry. And that's another thing about raspberries, is the bugs really like raspberries. I mean, you have to share with the bugs on raspberries. They don't get the blackberries as much, but the birds work on the blackberries. So let's go down to the other side. So usually these ones that are falling over, these are the ones that have berries, and I just lift them up to check. And actually, these raspberries are not as prickly as a blackberry. So they are prickly, but you can grab their leaves, which is usually where I grab them to move them around, and they're not as prickly. But if you get the stem, it'll get you a good stick. There's quite a few back here. And you know they're ready when they easily come off. If you pull and it doesn't want to come off, then they're not ready. So you have to just, and they have to be red. I mean, this one's not as red as the other ones, but it's good enough. And these are super red. And these are almost overdone. They turn mushy really fast. So if you don't harvest raspberries in time, like coming out every day, they will turn to mush and actually just fall off. One day they might be really firm and not quite all the way ready yet, but the next day if you don't catch them, then they'll fall off. So raspberries, you really have to be on top of picking to make sure you get the ones that are good. And so these down here are canes that grew last year, like the ones that actually I'm picking berries from right now. And then this one, let me see if I can get this over. This one that the bee is on, this is a new shoot that grew this year, and So this is like 1-year-old, what these bees are on, and it's flowering and it's gonna have berries at a later time. And the bees are going crazy on those flowers. This is all the raspberries that I got today. And I'll put them in the freezer and save them. And every day I'll come out and pick some. The blackberries aren't ready yet. I am getting some loganberries every day, so those are starting to come in, but the blackberries are still really red, so they're not turning purple yet. But that's everything that I had to do outside today. I'm glad y'all were out here today with me in the garden, seeing just a couple things that I had to do. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to y'all on the next one.